Okay, Sergeant, we good? Okay, thank you. Sorry for the wait. The previous committee ran over a little bit, and we had to get ourselves together. Good afternoon. I'm Councilmember Jim Gennaro, Chair of the Committee on Environmental Protection, Resiliency, and Waterfronts. Today we'll hold an oversight hearing on civilian enforcement of the air and noise codes and hear several pieces of legislation on this topic. Introductions 5, 291, 747, and 941. The committee welcomes testimony from the Department of Environmental Protection, advocates, and interested members of the public. The idling of gasoline and diesel-powered motor vehicles produces so-called criteria air pollutants, as they are referred to in the Clean Air Act, that harm public health. Any exposure to these criteria pollutants can inflame and irritate the respiratory tract, resulting in coughing, aggravation of asthma symptoms, and other conditions. Children are particularly vulnerable to the effects of airborne pollutants, which is why the city's anti-idling efforts have targeted schools and parks. Although the city has made considerable improvements in air quality over the last several decades, the New York City region is still in so-called serious non-attainment, according to the standards set by the Clean Air Act, for ozone, with concentrations that are up to 50% higher than those recommended by the EPA. Ground-level ozone is formed when nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, like those in car exhaust, react with each other in sunlight and in high temperatures. Ozone is an unstable molecule consisting of 3 oxygen atoms which damage respiratory tissue through the process of oxidation. To better enforce the city's prohibitions on idling, the city established the Citizen Air Compliant Portal in 2019, which allows New Yorkers to submit evidence of idling online in exchange for a percentage of any violation collected for the alleged idler. Since then, New Yorkers have submitted tens of thousands of complaints annually. So that's a lot. This enforcement program of the city's idling laws has undoubtedly helped to improve air quality, as evidenced by the more than 170,000 idling cases brought before the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, known as OATH. However, the civilian enforcement program needs to be improved. Let's talk about that. Last year, DEP testified that on multiple occasions, idling complainants had engaged in abusive behavior towards city employees, including verbal harassment, attempted assault, and unauthorized access of secured government office space. Other complainants have submitted other complainants have submitted the same video evidence for multiple violations with the intent to generate multiple summonses. Under current law, DEP must review the evidence submitted by complainants within 45 days, which may not be sufficient time for the agency to weed out all such duplicitous conduct. You heard about the amount of violations that they're dealing with, so they need time to do that. These aggressive and dishonest behaviors are not acceptable and need to be addressed by the council, in my opinion. My bill, Intro 941, would reform the city's idling complaint program in several ways. It would allow DEP to remove complainants from the program if they violate a code of conduct. This common sense measure would help to ensure the safety of DEP staff and the integrity of the evidence that is submitted by complainants. The bill would also increase the amount of time which DEP may review cities' idling complaints from 45 to 90 days, provide exemptions to ensure the comfort of school children, and make additional reforms. Despite the increase in civilian enforcement of the city's idling laws, certain companies continue to accrue a large number of repeat violations. According to a press release from the mayor's office, Con Edison, Amazon, Verizon, and other large companies each received thousands of idling violations between 2019 and April 2023, which are presumably regarded by such companies as a cost of doing business, which does nothing to decrease pollution from idling. increase idling penalties for buses and trucks, such as those proposed by Intro 291, which is sponsored by Councilmember Menon, and she'll have an opportunity to speak on a bill after I finish my statement, could help to stop recidivist idlers and lead to less pollution. The goal of anti-idling laws are to decrease pollution, not to generate revenue. Further, some have raised concerns that the idling complaint program is not sufficiently accessible. Intro 5, sponsored by Councilmember Aviles, she's going to get a chance to talk about our bill in a moment as well, would address the problem by requiring DEP to translate the, you know what? I'm going to let her tell it. Okay. This hearing will also address civilian enforcement of the noise code. In October last year, this committee held a hearing on DEP's management of civilian noise complaints. The hearing showed that virtually all such complaints were submitted by a handful of complainants who are in large sums of money by haphazardly and often incorrectly enforcing just one provision of the noise code, which related to the use of sound reproduction devices by commercial businesses. Some of these businesses received multiple violations at once, totaling up to tens of thousands of dollars in penalties without the opportunity to cure the initial violation. This city enacted Local Law 16 in January of this year, which I sponsored, to end this abuse of the civilian noise complaint program. We revisit this topic of civilian noise complaints today to discuss Intro 747. This bill, sponsored by me, would require DEP to establish a code of conduct for civilian noise complainants. Its enactment would help to prevent such abuse of the civilian noise complaint program from reoccurring. There you have it. I would like to thank the committee staff. We have policy analysts Ricky Chawla and Andrew Bourne, legislative counsel Austin Malone, new to this committee, to my right. We welcome him. Financial analyst Tanvir Singh, as well as my legislative director Josh Gachette for all their work. I'd also like to thank former committee counsel Claire McLaughlin, a champion for environmental legislation, who made tremendous contributions to the work of this committee. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out another former counsel to this committee, Samara Swanson, who I just saw in the room, didn't know she was coming. Let's all give Samara. Where's Samara? Samara the Great, thank you for coming today. And I will recognize the following council members who have joined us. We have council members Marmorato, Salamanca Jr., Holden, Nurse, Aviles, Zhuang, and we're also joined by Julie Menon. And I'm going to recognize now Councilmember Aviles to talk about her bill, and then I'll recognize Councilmember Menon to talk about her bill. So I recognize Councilmember Aviles.
Thank you, Chair Gennaro, for holding this hearing today and for offering Intro 5 to be heard again, as we did hold a hearing for this bill as Intro 898 a little more than a year ago. So good afternoon, everyone. As many of you know, I represent an environmental justice community with a large non-English speaking constituency. Nearly half of the residents in my district natively speak Spanish, Mandarin, Fujianese, or Arabic. As an environmental justice community, we are also impacted by a host of air quality issues, all of which we are working diligently on, including the BQE, which cuts through our district, a truck route that runs through the residential roadways, cruise ships that dump toxic air exhaust into our neighborhood, and last mile vehicles that idle at their point of origin in our district and throughout the neighborhood as they make deliveries, among others. While Intro 5 only gets at a small portion of what we are experiencing in District 38, it makes sense to me that at a time when DEP is understaffed and when we want to minimize police encounters where they may be unnecessary, that we wouldn't find ways to further empower our residents to help make the changes that we would like to see in our own communities. Last time we heard this piece of legislation, the administration testified that language access services were sufficient to help those who submitted idling reports, and that it was unclear whether evidence in a legal proceeding could be submitted in a language other than English. I look forward to hearing today from the administration what data they have to support the sufficiency of language access services with regards to the air quality program, as well as an answer to the question of how these same services may be used in a more integrated manner to allow for submission of evidence, allowing greater access to the program for communities like mine. So thank you, Chair, and look forward to hearing from everyone.
Thank you, Councilmember. I recognize Councilmember Menon to speak on her bill.
Thank you so much, Chair Gennaro, for today's hearing on the city's air quality and its impact on public health. Last year, a report by Earthjustice found that among the top 20 asthma capitals in the United States, New York City was ranked 15th, ahead of Miami, Nashville, and Los Angeles. Alarmingly, the city was ranked 5th for asthma-related deaths and 4th for the fewest asthma specialists per asthma patient. We can do better to stop being a capital for asthma. That is why I introduced Intro 291 that increases penalties for idling trucks and buses. The bill, which has a supermajority of 35 council members and the Manhattan Borough President, takes into account repeat violations as well. For a first-time offender, the violation would be between $1,000 and $2,000. For a second-time offender, it would be $2,000 to $4,000. For 3 or more, it would be between $3,000 to $6,000. Right now, vehicles are limited to 1 minute of idling near a school or park and 3 minutes elsewhere. A violation results in a civil penalty between $350 and $2,000. Repeat violations are not taken into account. Most companies appearing before the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, or OATH, receive literally a slap on the wrist with a minimum standard $350 adjudicated by OATH. Just last year, there were a whopping 77,382 tickets issued. Nearly 54%, or slightly over 42,000 of the tickets, were for out-of-state violators. Other municipalities already have laws on the book that take into account the number of repeat violations. Sacramento, California, Detroit, Michigan, and New Rochelle, New York already have laws that explicitly cite repeat offenses in penalty decisions. It's time for New York City to do the same, and my legislation would ensure that. Increasingly, the penalty sends a clear message that idling is not the cost of doing business in New York City. Cleaner air is vital for communities across the city, and I want to thank the bill drafter, Julia Goldsmith-Pinkham, Beth Golub, Jeff Baker, and Andrea Vasquez. And for my team, I want to thank my Chief of Staff, Jonathan Schutt, Genesis Vargas, and Mercedes Anderson. And I also want to thank the Chair so much for holding today's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Menon. And now I have to turn over to you to swear in the witnesses. Right?
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and to answer all council member questions with honesty? Thank you. You may begin.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here, Commissioner. You and your good team, and I look forward to your good testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I guess I would ask the Sergeant of Arms with the committee's permission. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. We did have a couple of images because there are some graphs and exhibits in the testimony that I thought would be helpful.
Oh, okay.
But you've got
and make sure you speak right into the microphone so that everybody can.
You've got
okay.
You've got printouts, but we didn't have enough for everybody here. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Environmental Protection Committee. I'm Rohit Tiagarwal, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. I'm joined today by Julie Lubin, DEP's Deputy Commissioner of Environmental Compliance. Julie oversees the Bureau of Environmental Compliance, BEC, which manages the enforcement of the noise and air codes, including the citizen complaint programs. Until earlier this year, BEC was managed as part of our Bureau of Sustainability, but I made the decision to bring in a new deputy commissioner specifically focused on the agency's air, noise, and asbestos work, reporting directly to me to ensure that BEC receives the attention it deserves. And I will say Julie's done an amazing job and, of course, is a council alum, I will point out. Not an elected, but council staff alum. While today's focus is on DEP's citizen complaint programs, our main message is that writing tickets for idling is not an end in itself, but rather is one tool to reach the goal of driving down vehicle emissions. While successful, the program has flaws, particularly in its failure to address pollution in many environmental justice communities. With some edits we would like to discuss with the committee, we believe the combination of Intros 5, 291, and 941 can significantly improve the program's impact on air pollution. Mr. Chairman, you and I have worked together on this issue of air quality for nearly 2 decades. Yeah. You have sponsored some of the most important air quality legislation we have, including the legislation that enabled DEP to phase out dirty heating oil, one of our most impactful local air quality initiatives. New York City has, in fact, made tremendous progress on air quality, driven largely by changes in both vehicle and building fuels as mandated by federal and local legislation. Over the past 20 years, we've seen a 60% decline in PM 2.5 and a 40% decline in nitrogen dioxide, as found in recent research by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. The health impacts of these improvements have been clear and direct. Over that same period, the number of asthma-related emergency room visits in New York City dropped by pretty much the same amounts. This success is remarkable. Today, our air is cleaner than it has been since the Civil War. The same DOHMH study also found that the bulk of this improvement stemmed from fuel quality requirements that were mandated federally for vehicles and locally for heating oil. In other words, we only saw real improvement when changes to equipment and fuels made it physically impossible to pollute. These mandates for mechanical or infrastructure improvements do much more than attempts to change behavior. Today, the biggest impact of air pollution is on EJ neighborhoods. The same DOHMH study found that the people who really suffer from air pollution are those who live in EJ neighborhoods like the South Bronx, Harlem, the North Shore of Staten Island, East New York, and Brownsville. The reality of pre-existing health conditions and reduced access to health care make air pollution a much greater threat in these neighborhoods than in wealthier parts of the city. In this administration, we have worked to implement several air quality laws enacted by the City Council. We have accelerated the phase-out of number 4 heating oil pursuant to Local Law 32 of 2023. We have implemented the Local Law of 2015 requirement to regulate emissions from restaurants with wood or coal-burning ovens, and are progressing on its requirement to regulate emissions from restaurants with charbroilers. These rules have been controversial. Some of you may remember the pizza flying over the gate. But DEP and this administration are committed to improving air quality and public health, and we appreciate the Council's continued partnership on this. We have also been dedicated to reducing vehicle emissions. DCAS is aggressively electrifying the city's own vehicle fleet, and the city recently won a $15 million federal grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to build the nation's largest curbside electric vehicle charging program. We have also embraced 100% renewable fuel for the city's heavy-duty vehicles, and DEP's new on-road diesel vehicles are all equipped with idle shutdown technology. We're also focused on addressing the pollution caused by delivery trucks. As promised in Plan YC and in the points of agreement related to the City of Yes for economic opportunity, we are developing a proposal for an indirect source rule to reduce emissions from trucks going to and from warehouses, many of which are located in environmental justice communities. I look forward to speaking with you more about this proposal in the future. A simple way to reduce vehicle emissions is to reduce idling. The Citizen Complaint Program is a useful tool in that overall effort. Pursuant to Local Law 58 of 2018, DEP has established a formal citizen air complaint program that invites civilians to report potential idling violations. Anyone can submit evidence of an idling violation, including a video and incident description, to DEP through our website. These reports go to BEC under Deputy Commissioner Lubin. BEC inspectors review all of the submissions. And I will point out it's important that each submission creates workload at BEC because we have to review it. I'll say more on that in a moment. If the inspectors determine that the evidence is sufficient, they issue a summons. DEP pursues the vast majority of complaints, which are those that we believe are valid and fully documented. Each is reviewed by a DEP air and noise inspector. If the vehicle owner is found in violation at the subsequent hearing at the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, OATH, the individual who submitted the evidence receives 25% of the collected fine. If DEP does not issue a summons, the person who submitted the evidence may decide to self-pursue the case at oath and is entitled in that case to receive 50% of the collected fine if the self-pursued case leads to a violation. Could I have the next slide, please? The program has grown exponentially, with reports increasing from 9,000 in 2019 to over 80,000 in 2023. We have already surpassed 80,000 this year, so we believe we are on track for 120,000 in 2024. In 2023, 95% of the cases DEP brought to oath resulted in a violation, so resulted in a decision by the administrative law judge that that violation was legitimate. The next slide, please. This administration has also invested resources in this program, including increasing the number of BEC staff to process these complaints. At my direction, BEC has also adopted automation processes that have accelerated processing times. Altogether, we have increased our processing capability by roughly 5 times. However, the number of complaints submitted has gone up nearly 10 times. As a result, our processing times have nearly doubled. We continue to pursue efficiencies in our processing, but the fact is that each video must be watched by one of our inspectors, which places a limit on how many we can process. Several large companies have received many violations, and our colleagues at the law department have pursued the largest violators, reaching agreements with several of them that have resulted in millions of dollars of fines paid to the city. As I said earlier, our goal is not to issue more fines. Our goal is to reduce air pollution. So we must use the civilian complaint program and idling violations as a tool to do that. As this program has grown, we have found many shortcomings in its design, which we believe these bills could address. If I could actually go 2 slides ahead now, please, I'd be grateful. The most important challenge is fundamentally that most trucks are designed to keep the engine running. Air conditioning, heating, music, and other cab comfort functions turn off when the engine is off. Thus, a traditional vehicle forces the driver to choose between obeying the law and his or her own comfort. The best solution to this is electrification. Electric trucks can idle all they want without producing emissions. Further, because most of a vehicle's emissions are generated while it is driving, not while it is stationary, replacing one gas-powered vehicle with an EV has many times the benefits of stopping one vehicle from idling. A second best solution is retrofitting, and we have some images of those devices on the screen. Vehicles can be retrofitted with anti-idling devices. Some shut off the engine after a set amount of time and are installed with batteries that power features like air conditioning and lights. These stop devices reduce idling and prevent drivers from facing discomfort. This is a tangible mechanical solution that would consistently address this problem. These devices do cost money. We estimate between $5,000 and $11,000, depending on the battery demand and the complexity of installation, per truck to install both anti-idling technology and batteries providing for driver comfort. The civilian complaint program can be a tool to incentivize companies to install these devices. We have used idling enforcement to encourage these kinds of improvements. Under the law, DEP has broad authority to grant waivers for idling. To date, we have granted just one waiver to a fleet that committed to electrifying half of its vehicles by the end of 2025. Last week, we issued 3 waivers conditional on the applicants electrifying or installing anti-idling devices. We believe the people of New York would benefit greatly if those companies accept those terms. But it would be helpful for this program directly to incentivize truck owners to either electrify or install anti-idling devices. This is why the CURE provision in Intro 941 is so important. The CURE encourages vehicle owners to spend money on a mechanical change instead of a fine. It encourages the owners to actually address the issue. Could we go back 1 slide, please, now? Sorry, we were out of order. A second problem with the current program is that it has essentially done nothing to improve air quality in many environmental justice communities. And I'd ask you to look at these 2 maps. As these 2 maps show, on the left-hand side, is a map of where all of the complaints were issued in fiscal year 2024. As that map shows, most civilian complaints are issued in the Manhattan core, in the wealthier parts in the city. It doesn't show up as well, but you see they are kind of the inverse of the other. The deterrent effect of this program, therefore, is mainly limited to trucks idling in Manhattan. In fact, because DEP's air inspectors now spend basically the vast majority of their time processing citizen complaints, an unintentional impact of this program has been to shift DEP's own enforcement out of many EJ neighborhoods to the processing of these primarily Manhattan violations. This is another way that a cure provision encouraging anti-idling devices would be impactful. Once installed, the device would be active wherever the truck goes, so a ticket issued in Manhattan could also improve air quality in the Bronx. Another problem is that the air code includes provisions that are imprecise or in conflict. As a result, when an oath judge identifies a point where the law is vague or contradictory, a case is often dismissed. Many of the weak aspects of the law have only become clear as increased enforcement has brought more varieties of circumstances. The bills being heard today are an opportunity to address these issues and strengthen the law. Issues include only vehicles with commercial plates are subject to the program, but many vehicles in commercial use do not have commercial plates. Thus, the law today discourages owners from getting the commercial plates they should have. Obscured or altered license plates are a valid defense, according to oath rulings, against a complaint. Thus, the law today encourages drivers and owners to obscure or tamper with their license plates. Only one summons is allowed per vehicle per day in the same location, even hours apart. The fines increase for a second and third violation, but only on the same vehicle, not for multiple offenses from vehicles in the same fleet. And there is no upper temperature limit dictating when a vehicle can idle for heat or cooling. In practice, this has meant, under ALJ rulings, that school buses can idle without limit by arguing that they were simply running the engine to manage internal air temperatures, even adjacent to a school. We would like to use these bills being heard today to resolve these issues. Addressing them would make the law clearer to follow and easier to enforce. A final shortcoming of the program today is that it has enabled unprofessional behavior from some participants. We should hold those who submit complaints to certain standards of professionalism and integrity. The first issue relates to the timely submission of complaints. There is currently no time limit on how long a complaint can be filed after it is recorded. DEP's own inspectors are expected to report their complaints within 9 days of observing the violation, though typically we do so within 5 days. It is important that civilian complainants be required to do the same. We've observed some complainants saving violations for months and then dumping them all at once. This is unfair to the accused and causes issues for DEP and oath, which then have to process large volumes of complaints in bunches, slowing down the review time for all complainants. The second issue is finding instances of fraud among some participants. Submitting false reports is wrong and it wastes city resources and time. Our inspectors have found the same video being submitted twice with different allegations with the intent to generate 2 summonses based on the same event. A single complainant submitting videos from different boroughs allegedly taken at the same time, and a complainant resubmitting slightly altered evidence after DEP had already found it unacceptable. To combat fraud, DEP has started issuing summonses to individuals who have committed this egregious behavior. We are not discouraging participation in this program. We are working to ensure that all participation is appropriate. In 2023, more than 900 people submitted at least one idling complaint. Summonses were issued to a total of 4 individuals. If I could have the next slide, please. A further issue we've been experiencing is that some participants have harassed and verbally attacked civil servants. The behavior of the complainants has included aggressive verbal harassment targeted at specific employees, attempts to access secure government office spaces looking for specific individuals, and in one instance, an attempt to assault a staff member. We have some quotes here on the screen. Frankly, I hesitate to read them because I don't want to legitimize them with my voice, but they are an example of the kinds of obscene and personal attacks that our staff deal with from a select few of the participants in this program. Such behavior is unacceptable. No one should feel threatened or tolerate abuse or harassment as part of their job. We need to protect our staff from the few individuals who feel they are justified in mistreating our employees. In sum, civilian complainants should be held to a code of conduct to protect staff and ensure the integrity of the civilian complaint program. Withholding reports, submitting false reports, and harassing staff should not be permitted. If a DEP inspector were accused of any of these actions, we would take them off enforcement duty and investigate. We must recognize the role that civilian participants are playing. They are not just making 311 complaints. They are contributing to the initiation of legal proceedings under the Air Code. It makes them an extension of the city's enforcement. There must be a method to address fraudulent submissions and abusive behavior. I've mentioned already how powerful anti-idling devices could be in reducing idling, not only in Manhattan, but citywide. Today, levied fines, which range from $350 to $2,000, appear to be too low to incentivize mechanical change like the installation of anti-idling devices. This is why in Plan YC a year and a half ago, the Adams administration clearly stated its support for increasing the fines. However, fines cannot be increased unless necessary reforms are put in place. The law must be more precise, must encourage cures, and must protect staff and the integrity of the system. In addition, any fine increase must be coupled by a change in the bounty structure. Today, the payout for the civilian complainant is based on a percentage of the fine imposed. Fines start at $350, but can increase up to $2,000 for repeat offenses. We know from published reports that some participants are earning between $150,000 and $250,000 per year from this program. If the fine were quadrupled, it would mean that someone could earn $1 million per year from this program. By contrast, the average salary of a DEP air inspector is roughly $55,000 per year. While we can and should pay people who do the service of reporting offenses, we do not need to make them millionaires. I don't believe any of the civilian enforcers are doing work that deserves more money than a trained DEP inspector earns. We suggest a flat rate payout for complainants. Today, complainants earn $87.50 for first offenses if DEP submits the complaint. Instead of quadrupling that bounty, we suggest a flat rate payout of $100. This brings me to the legislation being heard today. We fully support the intent of the 4 bills being heard. We do want to recommend a few specific changes that we believe are consistent with the objectives of these bills and would further enhance the program. Intro 5 requires that the Citizens Air Complaint Portal be translated into the designated citywide languages. We encourage New Yorkers of all backgrounds to participate in the complaint program. Currently, the portal has instructions and translations in all of the designated citywide languages. We welcome a discussion of ideas to encourage broader participation. Intro 941 addresses many of the shortcomings of the current program that I have described. We have discussed the need for these changes at previous hearings and are grateful for the chair for his leadership on this. I'd particularly like to stress again the importance of the cure provision this bill would create. This bill delivers on the idea that air quality, not fines or bounties, is the purpose behind this program. A truck that is retrofitted because of a summons issued in Manhattan will improve air quality everywhere it travels in the city. Regarding the bounty, Intro 941 cuts the current percentages in half. As I mentioned, we would instead recommend fixing the bounty at $100 for a DEP-pursued claim and $150 for a self-pursued claim. Intro 941 also authorizes DEP to create a code of conduct for participation in the program. We think the bill language should be amended to reflect that a complainant would be disciplined for the same reasons as we would discipline a DEP air and noise inspector. That is, submitting fraudulent or falsified evidence, abusing or harassing city staff, or intimidating, harassing, or threatening individuals in connection with a citizen complaint. Intro 291 would raise fines for idling violations, which is consistent with this administration's policy as stated in Plan YC. In fact, we would like to propose raising the maximum even higher to $10,000 for companies that receive significant numbers of repeat offenses in a year, companies, as we have seen, like Verizon and Con Ed. This would require assigning repeat violations to companies instead of individual trucks. Additionally, as I noted earlier, we cannot support Intro 291 unless other important changes to the program are addressed, and so we ask the Council to consider these bills as a package to pass together. Intro 747 extends some of these idling citizen complaint program changes to the noise citizen complaint program. Consistent with what I said about Intro 941, we support the overall idea, but would recommend changing the bill to establish a clear and high standard for discipline, and that the language of Intro 747 should be brought into alignment with what is finalized for Intro 941. Both the genius and the challenge with the civilian complaint program is that it creates a clear financial incentive for people to issue complaints. More than 2,500 New Yorkers have participated in this program since its inception. The vast majority seem to be driven largely by the desire to improve air quality. A small group, however, have turned this into what one participant described as a, quote, lucrative side hustle, unquote. I have no problem with people making money from doing the work to submit evidence of idling, but this law has created a lobby that has a direct financial stake in more summonses being issued, but not a direct financial stake in improving air quality. I encourage you to treat these viewpoints with the same skepticism you would treat of any lobbyist seeking to prevent the reform of a government program from which their client makes millions. I want to reiterate my and my colleagues' thanks to Chair Gennaro and the committee for your attention to these programs. I recognize that the bills being heard today include many of the ideas that we discussed during the noise enforcement hearing last fall. The Council's partnership on these is critical to maximizing the effectiveness of these citizen enforcement programs. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. My colleagues and I are happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your comprehensive testimony. I certainly appreciate it. I'm going to be going through your statement in a moment, as I normally do, and pose some questions. I want to recognize that we're joined by Councilman Ressler. I appreciate his presence here today. Let's take a sip and I'll... just go back through your statement. I have prepared questions, but for me, I'm going to try to limit my questioning because we have so many people scheduled to testify. And of course, one of the main benefits we get from these hearings is hearing from stakeholders, and we have a whole bunch of people who want to testify, so we do want to get to them because this hearing is going to go on for hours, but I have to do my due diligence and pose some questions to you. I made notes in your statement. I just want to reinforce what you said on page 2 of your statement about the, because we're talking about ozone, but in PM 2.5 is a critically important pollutant that's small particles that go straight into the lungs go right past the body's defenses. A 60% decline in PM 2.5, and also a big reduction in NO2. And to correlate that with the reduced visits to emergency rooms for asthma is incredible. And I mentioned this because we should do everything we can to redouble our efforts to make these, numbers even lower. I just want to reinforce to everyone here that this is what this is all about. It's not about revenue. So thank you for that. Your testimony, again, I'm just sort of reinforcing about how what we're doing, even though a lot of the action takes place in Midtown Manhattan and Lower Manhattan, it's going to spill over into the EJ communities and give them some needed relief, and so we certainly do appreciate that. I'm actually going to ask you a question soon, so just get ready. It's coming. And now, pardon me, on page 4 of your statement, you talk about the exponential growth of the program from 9,000 violations to 80,000 in 2023. We're over 100,000 now. We're looking at 120,000 cases by the time we close it out, and you indicate that all these have to get reviewed, and for the benefit of this panel, for people in the audience who may have a little bit of confusion, so the civilian enforcer gives the complaint to DEP. DEP makes a determination as to whether or not it wants to pursue that, which it does with oath, right? It does the adjudication with oath. And there are presumably violations that it believes the evidence is not sufficient to pursue it, and dismisses those violations. Now, is that completely dispositive, or can the complainant then go to oath after it's found to be insufficient by DEP? How does that work?
Sure. Thank you, Council Member. And I'll ask Deputy Commissioner to chime in perhaps with a few more of the details.
You can call me chairman if you want,
Sorry?
So, you can call me chairman if you want.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
I'm messing with you, Rit. It's okay. It's all good. We're friends, yeah.
So the way that the law states it now is DEP basically has first dibs, if you will.
Right.
Right. We have the right to decide that a complaint is valid and likely to succeed based on the case law that's been accumulated by all of these ALJ decisions at oath. And if so, the law basically requires us within 45 days to tell the complainant whether we are going to pursue it or not. If we do not pursue it, they are allowed to self-pursue. That's that alternative path. It requires them to do the paperwork of taking the case to oath.
Right, but I just want to drill down on that a little bit. Because that would be, and I guess a reason for, so DEP gets the first opportunity, and it theoretically could sort of pass on that opportunity because it just can't get to it within the requisite amount of time. And so once DEP's so-called clock is up, then the complainant can, has given it to DEP, now can take it to oath. And I understand how that works, but if there is a determination made by DEP that the evidence is insufficient, fraudulent, whatever, does DEP have the ability to completely dismiss that case, or it goes back to the complainant to make their case to oath, notwithstanding the fact that DEP has found the violation to be, I'm just wondering whether DEP has the ability to just completely dismiss a violation and that's the end of it.
Right. If we find that the evidence is insufficient, the citizen could not pursue it. They can pursue it if we are too late. We don't review it in time.
Right, okay. And so DEP does have the ability to dismiss a violation, Deputy Commissioner, right?
Right, we say it doesn't meet the, it's like not having a prima facie case. They
Right.
can't go forward. Yeah.
Right, is there any appeal that is available to the complainant, or?
No.
No, okay. And so I just want everyone to understand the process. It's just so if DEP gets them, they move them through oath, they get the violation, or they don't do it in time, and then, or they just outright dismiss it. Okay, so I just want to make that clear for everybody. I got to change my distance glasses to my reading glasses to go there. Do we have members who want to ask questions? Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you for your discussion of the, cure of the, cure provision. I'm in agreement with you on that, and that is the vector by which we create real meaningful change in idling in New York City. And very happy to engage with you on a discussion about the about going to about the bounty structure and how the increase in fines can lead to people making millions of dollars for doing this, and so we've tried to partner before, and I look forward to speaking with you more about that. We'll hear testimony from stakeholders, of course, and thank you for your support of 941. And this is what happens when we have a lot of collaboration in previous hearings where we're kind of like on the same page, and so I appreciate that. I have maybe one or two questions that I want to get to, but we have, who's looking to ask questions? Oh, Councilmember Aviles wishes to be recognized for questions. I recognize Councilmember Aviles for questions.
Great, thank you, Chair. Excuse me. So if a non-English speaking individual wishes to submit an idling complaint through the citizen error complaint portal, how do they go about doing so?
Thank you, Councilmember. Right now, as I mentioned in the testimony, all of our materials are available in all of the languages. The website has the Google Translate button, so it can automatically be translated. The downloadable form the instructions are all in the variety of languages. We currently require that the open form section be submitted in English. And right now we do that for a practical reason. That is something that our inspectors have to rely on to make their complaint that they are signing their names to. And we are exploring with the law department what flexibility we would have to accept things in other languages. And unfortunately, we did not get a determination or guidance from the law department in time for this hearing. So it is something that we would be very eager to work with you with. But as I said in my testimony, I think the biggest single problem with this program is that it's mainly used in the non-EJ parts of New York City. And so we have to do more to get participation in those neighborhoods such as the ones you represent.
Yeah, I think that point definitely underscores, because right now I was actually trying to submit a complaint as we were sitting here, and the interface is not as simple. And I think clearly the agency has made an effort to translate what the interface is, but you have to toggle between multiple windows already. So we are nowhere near an interface that is remotely user-friendly, which to me is a giant barrier for anyone who's going to be submitting. So there seems to, the user interface needs a long way to go to make it actually accessible. I appreciate the, I think also it does say you have to answer everything in English. If you don't know, you can't answer it. I'm kind of mystified, but I realize that you are working on that. In the Immigration Committee, we're going to be looking at Local Law 30 and how the city is actually meeting its mandate to provide language accessibility, and we see kind of these real gaps across the system, and this is unfortunately another place where we need to do some serious work. So in terms of I think I just talked through pretty much all my questions. I mean, I think we have a long way to go to make this program accessible to non-English speaking communities. If I may just quickly seg to, and Chair, if it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I look forward to working with you on that, and we definitely need to do a better interface that makes it easier for New Yorkers to participate. In terms of currently, the idling law in New York City notes a maximum of 3 minutes, and that time is cut substantially, as you know, near schools, as an acknowledgement that children are particularly a vulnerable population that we are seeking to protect. Is there any evidence to suggest that 18 minutes is the amount of time that's needed for either loading or unloading, or the health impacts of an 18-minute interval?
I'm sorry, Councilmember, what's the 18
For
minute?
18 minutes is under, I guess, the legislation and Intro 941.
I thought it was 15. So, Councilmember, I'll
Or even
address.
let's do 15.
Yeah, I'll address the way I understand that, and then ask the Deputy Commissioner to elaborate. As I mentioned in my testimony, first of all, DEP follows the case law that the administrative law judges create, right? As in all legal proceedings, these are legal proceedings. These are not 311 complaints, right? And some of the difficulty of the forms that we have is because this is different than just registering a complaint. This is kind of doing the same paperwork that a DEP inspector or a police officer has to do to initiate a legal enforcement proceeding. We, therefore, when we review these things, we review them both for whether they are complete in terms of evidence. Is the video fully 3 minutes? Do we think it shows what it's claimed to show? We also consider it in light of the case law that has developed at oath. And there is a gap, as I pointed out, which I think we can fix here, which is that there is an inconsistency between the law that governs school bus internal comfort and a gap in what the law, in what the air code says school buses can do. As a result, oath ALJs have dismissed a set of school buses, of school bus cases, and we believe we should use legislation to clarify and tighten it so that there is greater alignment. In terms of 15 minutes, The issue here, again, is that these vehicles require the engine to run either for heating or for cooling. And so we would be very happy to work with the council and with the committee to make this even clearer, but there is going to have to be some amount of time for the bus either to cool things down when it's hot out or warm things up when it's cool out before the students get on board. Let me just ask, Julie, did I do that justice?
Yes, that's, we currently have a best practice for 15 minutes, which the law would codify. In some cases, the engine of a vehicle needs the 3 minutes versus the 1 minute, but the 15 minutes is to allow for this cooling and heating.
Yeah, I think what I often see, actually on a daily basis, is a lining up of 4 to 5 buses in front of a building who are sitting there idling for significant amounts of time with no children in them because they've already dropped off the kids. Is this standard just going to continue to allow them? I guess, how does the standard address the cumulative impact of having 4 or 5 buses at a clip idling for such significantly long periods of time in front of school buildings?
Right. Well, again, Councilmember,
With and without children.
Right. The issue is the defenses that the oath ALJs have demonstrated they are willing to accept. Right. And so it may be in practice that you know that they've done their work for the day. There's not a student that's going to get on board for the next hour or two. But if an ALJ is willing to accept an argument that, oh, maybe there was going to be another student coming back, then that summons would get dismissed. And our objective is through this legislation to clarify it so that we can be clear about the ones that should be pursued.
Yeah, I guess just lastly, and thank you, Chair, so much.
I'm happy to give you latitude. I'm going to jump in on this too.
No, I know the key elements here. How is DEP pursuing and ensuring that that the state and the city are incentivizing and moving very aggressively to fully electrifying our school bus fleet?
Well, Councilmember, first of all, as you know, DEP is not in charge of either the school buses or vehicle electrification. However, this administration has made vehicle electrification a significant priority, as I said in my testimony. Several months ago, we celebrated a very large federal grant that NICE Bus received, who was able proudly to inform me that New York City is now the home to the largest fleet of electric school buses. It's still pretty small because it's still just starting and the first vehicles are being delivered, but they are there. And we think that is one of our biggest opportunities. And as you know, the state law now will require school buses to electrify as well. So we think that's very promising over the next 5 to 10 years.
And also, I just want to jump in that at the end of 2021, we did a Danny Drum bill on school buses that creates I think a date certain. It's off the top of my head. I think it's 2035, and that's either a new electric school bus or an old one that gets retrofitted. I believe I believe the final completion is 2035 on that, and there are like milestones that get to that. I can't speak to the state law. I can just say what we've done on the city level. That went through my committee. Like I said, it was a Danny Drum bill. And regarding the 15 minutes, if this also is not just school buses, it's also these charter buses that go to Atlantic City, and it's cold out or whatever, and the idea is that if it's really cold or really hot, and if there are passengers in the bus, that's the difference. So if there are not passengers in the bus, they just can't stage and idle. So that's not how that works. And so,
Well, it does in practicality.
I'm Yeah,
I get, my question
it's a
was
long
really
way
around-
sometimes between the creed and the deed, so,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
this is what
Around the
we're-
mitigation, like what is the mitigation plans that are, or like how is the city trying to either allocate resources to mitigate this collective impacts that we're seeing, and in particular in front of schools on a
And
daily basis?
I'm happy to
Yeah.
jump in on that. I think what we're trying to do with, and also what the commissioner made reference to is that we, each of the bills has like a piece. And depending upon, so this one zigs, this one zags, whatever, but we got to put the whole puzzle together. So this is what we're seeking to accomplish. This is not like a one bill problem. This is a, multiple bill that's going to require, several local laws to be put forward as a package. And these items are just being heard for the first time here. Well, not your bill, but second time for your bill. But the idea is to get all the stakeholder input, and then then the real fun begins in terms of how we continue to craft the bills so that they will address all the outstanding issues. One that you brought up, which is very relevant, particularly in your community and many communities. And so, was that it? You're good. So, okay.
Thank you, Chair, and
Sure.
thank you, Commissioner. I guess just one last question in terms of the language accessibility work that is in process. Are there any timeframes that you can share or milestones that the department is planning to meet in the exploration and work to make this system language accessible that I can bother you about?
Councilmember, I'm happy to talk with you offline about that. Frankly, a lot of it depends on our colleagues at the law department, and they assure us that they are working on it as quickly as they can, but
Great.
the law department
I'll
has its
keep
thing.
calling.
Thank you.
You so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I just have one last question. And so, we have the citizen enforcers, doing a lot of work around town. We want to make sure that that program proceeds, along lines of excellence. But in many people's estimation, there's, nothing better than a DEP professional out there, doing the enforcement, which of course happens. I just wanted to ask, what is the number of air and noise enforcers that are in the field now? That's kind of like the first question. And the second one, in terms of where they're deployed, we have maps and everything about as to where the EJ hotspots are or whatever. I would imagine that they're, deployed in areas where their efforts will, reap the most benefits in terms of clean air. If you could talk about, numbers and where they're deployed, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I'll ask the Deputy Commissioner to chime in with numbers, but let me start by saying, first of all, we have a very small group of air and noise inspectors. They do both air and noise inspections. It is the same group of people. They do not make a lavish salary, and we do have some retention issues in that group. Traditionally, DEP has only been staffed to be responsive, right? So we will pursue complaints that are based on 311 calls. People call 311, they have either an air quality or a noise complaint, we will schedule a visit. And that works much of the time when you're talking about a static issue, if there's a construction site or something like that. It doesn't really work for vehicles because they're mobile. That's why we are innovating around different approaches to technology-based enforcement. Many of you know that we've had a very successful program of noise cameras. It's the same problem. If the violation moves around, it's very hard for a limited number of inspectors to chase after it. And as I mentioned in my testimony, one of the things that has happened while the number of the civilian complaints has grown so much is that our limited pool of air and noise inspectors are increasingly chained to their desks reviewing these.
So it's the same that
the same
respond to
people.
complaints and also
Yes.
review the video
Yes.
footage at Left Rack or wherever, right?
Right. And they were the ones I was out a couple of weeks ago at Forest Hills Stadium on a Saturday night or a Sunday night.
Okay,
right?
well, you could have
Same
invited
group of people.
You could have invited me, but okay. Yeah.
We were dealing with the neighbors who didn't like it, so it wasn't a party.
Okay, well, I'm always ready to give you backup. And so, did Deputy Commissioner want to add something on that?
The numbers.
Yes, currently we have 65 air and noise inspectors, and we have 15 who watch videos and prepare summonses. Of these, 10 are dedicated to only idling and 5 are on and off idling. So these inspectors are doing, as the commissioner said, all kinds of air inspections in response to 311. We have odors, we have dust, we have every kind of noise, commercial music, dog barking. It's sort of an endless black smoke, all kinds of issues that we have to address through the 311 system. So it's actually a pretty small number relative to all the issues we have in the city. 10 of those inspectors only are reviewing videos and at present do not go in the field. So I think that was part of your question, and the other 5 do both. And that could include an idling complaint as well, for example, a passenger car. Civilians do not do those, they only do commercial vehicles, but we may do everything.
Right. Okay. All the more reason why we have to get the civilian enforcement right and operating along lines of excellence, code of conduct, everything going like we need to make it. So this is, a difficult endeavor. I've been grateful to have the administration's partnership and, your partnership commissioner and that of your good team. And we look forward to peeling the onion and arriving at a place where everyone is pretty much in their happy place. And I'm not saying that to be funny. We just need to get it right. And so we thank you for your commitment to partnering with us on that. And with anybody wants to ask questions of the? Councilmember Ressler wishes to be recognized. I recognize Councilmember Ressler for questions, but he's not going to get as much time as Alexa, okay?
We can't all be Alexa Aviles.
I'm telling you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity and for the hearing today, and thank you, Commissioner and team, for your thoughtful testimony. Just want to generally state how appreciative I am of the partnership with DP under your leadership, so thank you very much for the work that you do and your stellar team. I did have a few questions that I wanted to ask that I just worry about some of the operational implications of some of these changes and would love some more information. The reduction in time to have only 5 days to submit a complaint from the time that the video is captured. Well, let me just one step back. I think citizen enforcement tools are important, and I think that they are valuable, and I think you testified to that today. I believe that there are many other areas where we could be doing more citizen enforcement that would be very helpful in ensuring that bad actors across the city of New York are held accountable. There's only so many city workers, you only have so many eyes and ears, and as hard as the inspectors at DP work, and as much as we appreciate their service to the city, it's just impossible for them to be holding everyone accountable that needs to be. So this is another effective deterrent, and I think it's a useful tool. I'm concerned, so just having only 5 days to submit the paperwork, I think we would all agree a complex process to actually submit a claim. Are there, having documents notified, et cetera, have you thought at all, along with the reduced time frame, to streamline or simplify the process to submit a complaint? Would that be a part of that trade-off in the reduced time frame?
Look, as I said, we have been working very hard to figure out how to make this entire system as efficient and simple as possible. Any increase in simplicity reduces our workload, improves our performance, streamlines our own operations as well. I think one of the things that we have been working on is whether there is an app that we could develop that would simplify a lot of that. As you know, government agencies aren't always the best at developing apps, and so we are working on it, but it is a bit of slow going. But look, I would be very interested in working with the committee if there are ideas for how we can make it easier to submit.
I appreciate that.
In ways, but if I could finish, in ways that are consistent still with the successful determinations at oath. Because frankly, I think one of the things that repeatedly gets lost here is that we are playing a role of quality control. And just as we would not let one of our air inspectors submit a complaint that we think would violate case law or would be dismissed, we do the same quality control here. This is not the same as 311 complaints.
Fair. I just think that those two things should go hand in hand. If we're tightening the time frame up and only giving people 5 days to submit the complaint, and we should streamline the process and make it easier to do it. So I'm open to those kinds of trade-offs. I just think they need to happen. Other thing that I wanted to ask about is, or I have a couple things actually, but another thing I'd like to ask about is the reduction in the percentage of the fine collected going back to the complainant and imposing a flat fare as well, or flat fine amount as well. Have you considered capping the total amount that a single complainant could generate in revenue in the course of a year? Complainant X could generate up to X thousands of dollars in revenue from submitting idling complaints.
It's not something that I have considered. I don't know if there's a basis in law.
That's not something that we've considered to date. And as the commissioner said, if that was something that the council were interested in, it would have to be the subject of legal research.
Great. I do think it's worth considering. I think that if we want to encourage Jane and John Doe to capture idling, submit the complaint, we want it to be an easier process for them to submit it, and we want everyone to be thinking about how we can do that. If we want to discourage somebody from giving up their job and just spending all day filing idling complaints, then having a cap might be a way to pursue that. I just think it's a different approach that's worth considering as well. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about school buses. I'm really pleased that you referenced Nice Bus. They have a big depot in the 33rd Council District. I think that they are a tremendous new nonprofit organization that frankly should be taking over every single school bus contract in the city of New York. We would have a more reliable system with the Office of People Transportation if Nice Bus had every single contract. And they're doing a great job with students with disabilities, and they're electrifying their fleet. I just went out and visited one of the new electric school buses before the first week of school. I'm all about it. And I think it's not unreasonable for us to say we don't want kids on a bus if the temperature's cold or the temperature's hot. It can be a dangerous condition, especially if students with disabilities and other folks who have other challenges. Could we limit the violations to only when students are on a bus? We don't want school bus drivers keeping the engine running when there aren't students, right? And so is that something that could be considered? Or have you considered that as DEP approaches this as well?
Yeah, I'll just mention that's in the bill.
That is there. Okay, I misunderstood
If
that.
there's no students, then, then it only kicks in if there's students.
Thank you for clarifying, Chair.
Sure.
I apologize for missing that. Okay, those were my primary questions. I think that there are good faith efforts to make this work better. And I think that there's still some fine-tuning to do here, and I would welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation. I know our chair always has an open door, and I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate you coming today with thoughtful testimony, and look forward to trying to make some improvements so that we can really make this citizen enforcement model even more successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ressler, for your good questions, as always. And we still have a lot of work to do, and we know that you'll be right in the center of it, and we appreciate you being a very active member of this committee. With that said, I have no more questions for this panel. I want to Again, thank everyone for all the good work. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, he has the paper, and I didn't see your name on the paper.
Didn't I
And
say?
so, is his name on the paper? Oh, okay. Yeah, but
It's too small.
not so many-
Yeah, okay.
Just make a big check so I can see it. Okay, all right. I recognize Councilmember Holden for questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner. A couple of questions on your testimony where you mentioned that oath, if the license plate is doctored somewhat, they can get off, right? And you mentioned about if the license plate is not commercial, it doesn't, and I have that issue all the time with commercial vehicles parked in the neighborhoods, and police don't recognize it because it doesn't say commercial on it. It's misregistered or it's out of state. Now, what about these out of state vehicles that, like Pennsylvania, that doesn't have commercial on it? Are those considered, do we get around that? Or New Jersey, I believe, does the same thing?
I don't know the practices of other states, but I don't believe we can enforce against companies that are out of state.
So it's clearly a truck.
We can.
No, it's
excuse me,
clearly an
let me correct.
18-wheel truck.
Right, so what we would recommend is that the bill say that obviously commercial vehicles that do not have commercial plates would be subject to the law. That's one of the recommendations that we would
Right,
make.
because the Bill 291 mentions RCNY, which is the rules of the City of New York, and that's the problem. Because that has a whole bunch of trucks that would not be included, and we couldn't do anything about either.
Agreed, and our recommendation would be to modify, to have a carve-out that most of the City of New York's rule that's cited there would apply, except for the commercial plate requirement.
Yeah, it
of
would
that
be
rule.
under the vehicle traffic laws, which is a state
Well,
issue.
that one we think is too broad, actually. It captures too many, that one refers to, I believe, the word property very generally, so we like the city rule, but we would tweak the city rule to encompass commercial vehicles that do not have commercial plates.
Right, so if it's a van and they don't have seats in them and they're loading and unloading, that's a commercial vehicle essentially, right?
Yeah, we agree with what you're proposing.
Okay, so that's a very, very important feature, because otherwise, so many vehicles would get through and we wouldn't be able to enforce that. So that's an important thing on Chair, you left, that the 291 should include. That's why, but the biggest problem is, and I think we have to also do this with the police department, because they don't know what a commercial vehicle is many times. Because I tell them, this van, and many people are getting around the laws now by not registering, what you mentioned, Commissioner, not registering as a commercial vehicle. So they can park in neighborhoods, they can do, they could idle, they could unload, and they're parking on the streets of residential areas. So, yeah, so that's an important feature. I thank you for that, and if we can get, I'll vote for the bill if they make those changes. Thank you so much. Chair. Okay. There's a pause in the action. Yeah. Do you want me to take over? I'll take over. I'll give myself more time again. Okay. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Marmorato, and then back to Holden. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Commissioner, bravo on the flood kit event. My district was ecstatic. Between the education and the goodies that they received, it's a huge hit in my district, and I look forward to you guys doing more of them throughout the city. I'm sure the people of the city really would appreciate it like our district did. So I just wanted to go over the civilian complaints. So District 13 is very active, especially when it comes to reporting the illegal cannabis shops. We do an online form ourselves, and then we pass it over to the sheriff's office. So as far as civilian complaints for the idling cars, how do my constituents go about it? Because I am shocked that we're not even on here with complaints, and I just want to know how they can get active and how they can actually get compensated for this.
Well, first of all, thank you. We had a great time in your district. In fact, we were just out in the Rockaways last night doing another one with,
Very
with
nice.
a similarly large crowd, so I appreciate that. And I want to thank Beth DeFalco, our Deputy Commissioner, for being the mastermind of that whole program. First of all, let me just be clear, the citizen complaint program only applies to trucks and buses,
Yes.
right, to commercial, so not for cars. And again, it is online. As Councilmember Avila has pointed out, it requires a little bit of work to figure out. We acknowledge that, as I've said, we have been trying to figure out how we could streamline it, both from a process and from a user interface point of view. I don't have any real news on that right at the moment, but it is certainly something that we are working on. But basically, we have a website. People can go read the instructions. You have to record with a video for 3 minutes. You have to get several sides of the vehicle. There has to be enough evidence through sound or exhaust or something to make it clear to a judge that the engine is actually running. And you have to demonstrate the reporting marks, the license plate, and other information that's on the vehicle. All of that is very clear on our website. Again, it's a little bit complex, but it is all pretty well documented, which is why, and I think the evidence for that is that we have had 2,500 New Yorkers participate, right? So it isn't just a handful of people who have figured this out. It is 2,500 individuals thus far.
Okay, now what are you doing with, like, false complaints? Like, is there been do you have a percentage of how many false complaints there are?
It is a very small number, right? And that's a wonderful part of this program, right? The vast majority of the complaints that are submitted are good. The vast majority of them, DEP takes ownership of and submits, and therefore we do a lot of the work rather than requiring the citizen complainant to do that work. Again, what we see every now and then is when an administrative law judge makes a ruling, right, and basically changes the way the law is interpreted, we do react. And so there have been some changes over the last 2 years in our guidance, but it's always driven by the fact that we feel that we can only put forward complaints that we think have a high likelihood of being upheld.
Just a few more questions I have. So, given that you like to ensure safety and protection for the civilian complaints, for people facing abuse or threats, what is DEP doing currently to monitor and address these threats of violence and abuse towards our civilians?
Towards our workers? Or?
No, the civilians that are reporting.
Look, we have heard, we have received a handful of instances where people seeking to record information and file complaints have been threatened by the drivers or what have you. Look, you know, our air and noise, basically, we advise the same thing as we advise our air and noise inspectors. DEP's air and noise inspectors are unarmed. It is one of the reasons that we divide responsibility for particularly noise enforcement with the police. In any instance where there is the potential for a threat, we do not send our inspectors. We ask the police department to take it. And so basically our advice is if and when that happens, we need civilians to withdraw. We do not have any way right now to take action against that unless the civilian files a complaint with NYPD.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. And with that, I'll thank the panel for the third time and look forward to working with you everyone should know that the administration is, although they are not going to have a person in the room, there will be multiple people from the administration, and just talk to the representative of the mayor's office, that all of the testimony that is put forward today is going to be listened to by the administration. And so that's always, I'm a stickler about that, because the administration should hear the good testimony, and they always cooperate in that. And so anything that is said to this council will also be heard by the administration. So with that said, great to see you, Rit, everyone else, and Deputy Commissioner. And yeah, thank you. And we're going to take a minute just to work with staff here to kind of get the order of witnesses together. People should not, we'll have a little business to do, and then we're going to go to the public testimony. Okay, if I could ask people to sit down and... Okay, while staff is getting the witness slips and, oh, it's done? Okay, fine. And so before we can commence with the public comment period, I want to thank everyone at the outset. You know, we're going to be here for a while, and so, and it's going to be a 2-minute sort of strictly enforced limit on testimony. And so we ask people to keep it within 2 minutes because the people at the end of the hearing are going to be waiting a long time. And so 2 minutes, and then we're going to call time. I like to be a little flexible. I don't think the amount of witnesses we have today is going to give me the ability to do that. But before we can start, I have this boilerplate that I have to read about the public comment period. I'm legally obligated to read this. Just read the whole thing, right? Yep. Okay. All right. I start here or up here? Right here. Okay. I now open the, we didn't used to do this, but now we do it. I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. This is the next section. Okay. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant-at-Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant-at-Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearings, on today's hearing topic of citizen complaint programs, including the following legislation. Intros 5, 291, 747, and 941. Is that it? Okay, I did it. All right. What dropped?
Pen.
Okay.
It's okay, go ahead.
You got that? Okay, I'm going to be calling the first panel. Yeah, I think my eyeglass prescription just ran out. First witnesses, our very own Samara Swanston. I didn't put her on top, but she's a favorite of council staff here, so she is part of the first panel. Look forward to hearing from her. Wayne Arden from the Sierra Club, and Eric Goldstein, a frequent flyer at this committee from the Natural Resources Defense Council. Gregory Smith-Simon, representing the Rise to Resilience Coalition, and Juno Chow-La-Song from the, she represents Citizen Complaint Program. Looks like Suhali Mendez, New York Lawyers from the Public Interest. That will constitute the first panel. Now I'll put my other glasses on. And so, why don't we go from my left to my right? And good to see you, Samara. Thanks for, thanks for being here today. It's great to. How many years were you with the council? 17. 17. Wow. Now you're on the other side of the table. So, Thank you very much for being here, and please commence with your good testimony. You got to speak into the mic. You got to get the mic.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Samara Swanston, and I recently retired from the City Council after more than 17 years as legislative attorney on this very committee. In 2018, I helped draft Local Law 58, which expanded access for citizens to report illegal idling and to be paid 25% of the fines, which is the correct and fair percentage for this important work. Together with Council Member Helen Rosenthal and George Pakenham, we set the groundwork for today's hugely successful program. Let me be clear. The program is working exactly as we intended in 2018. I'm here today because I oppose 941 and I support two very important bills, Intro 5 and Intro 291. We need to protect the Citizen Complaint Air Program and expand it even further. Intro 941 threatens this crucial program, and Intro 941 needs to be stopped. Let me address the elephant in the room, money. First, big companies are paying millions of dollars in fines, and they don't like it. Second, some try to complain about individual citizens making a lot of money from the program. To those people, I say, so what? Last year, there were over 77,000 citizen idling violations issued, up from 16 in 2018, up from just 16. Each one represents a truck or bus polluting our air. Who cares?
Samara, I love you, but I got to be fair to everybody, and it just your time has expired. You're the most wonderful person I know. I appreciate it, and so thank you. Thank you for your good testimony. I appreciate it. Eric.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Eric Goldstein from the Natural Resources Defense Council. The citizen complaint and citizen enforcement provisions of the City Code are among the most creative and empowering actions ever taken by the Council to ensure implementation of city laws designed to safeguard public health and the quality of life for city residents. They were added in the early 1970s based upon the Federal Clean Air Act citizen suit provision, and they were designed to address serious air quality and noise quality problems that continue to this day. NRDC was among the first groups to use the air code provision in the 1980s when we went after diesel bus idling and diesel bus visible emissions. To be sure, in recent years, the operation of these citizen enforcement programs has not been perfect, and we detail those issues in our written testimony, but the need for the Council is to mend these provisions to enhance them, not to end them. For despite the best efforts of DEP and its staff, and despite the progress that's been made in reducing overall pollution, the need for citizen enforcement of our air and noise codes remains both necessary and desirable. We oppose Intro 941 in its current form and believe it would significantly weaken the citizen enforcement program. Specifically, we object to the provision that would allow idling adjacent to schools for 15 minutes, and we also object to the proposal that would allow for reduced penalty provisions of 50% if anti-idling technology has been installed. And while we are supportive of conversion to electric buses, electric vehicles, we set forth our details again in our written testimony. Intro 741 would require DEP to create a code of conduct. We agree with the motivation behind this bill, but we believe it should be amended before passage. We set that out in our written testimony. Intro 291, introduced by Councilmember Menon, would increase civil penalties. NRDC supports this legislation. We also encourage the Council to consider adding some mechanism for capping the bounty awards that could result from these increased penalties. And finally, Intro 5,
Eric, your time has expired.
Would require DEP to translate Citizen Air Complaint Portal into other languages. We support that bill as well.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. It's always like, where would the city be without NRDC, and where would NRDC be without you being there for at least 40 years that I know of? And so,
Thank you for your leadership, and we look forward to working with you, with all of the stakeholders and the commissioner to come up with reforms that are sensible and that advance the mutual objectives we all share.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you, Eric. Please proceed with, if you could state your name for the record and proceed. Oh, I'm supposed to call your name, right? With the slips. Okay, if you could proceed with, if you could state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Suhali Mendez. I am the Policy and Legislative Coordinator at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. And before I begin my testimony, I want to offer thanks to the committee as well as Chair Gennaro for offering this hearing and allowing the public to testify on these important pieces of legislation. As someone who was born as well as raised in the Bronx, seeing firsthand the impacts of vehicle idling in communities like mine, and seeing the frequency in the idling along with the spewing of dangerous emissions that harms human health and environment, we strongly support and urge the passing of introductions of bills number 5 as well as 291, as these bills will continue to progress the council's commitment to New York City's climate goals. Last year, we released a report, as you may know, on school bus idling called Wake Up and Smell the Fumes, which we observed that 1 in 4 school buses were found idling longer than 1 minute in front of schools. This is to say that idling is still an issue. We do, however, have concerns about Intro 941, which will alter regulations on the citizens' complaint programs to enforce idling law. This bill will severely weaken the effectiveness of the program by decreasing the financial incentives of New Yorkers by imposing a stricter deadline for the DEP to create arbitrary rules which exclude some New Yorkers. We hope to see mandates for proactive measures to expand and reform the citizen air complaint program to make it more transparent, equitable, accessible for all New Yorkers, namely those in heavily impacted communities, such as the Bronx. And lastly, there are additional recommendations.
Please complete your sentence.
Pardon?
I said, please complete your sentence.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I just wanted to say that additional suggestions are included in my testimony at length, which I will submit.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time's expired. Appreciate your good testimony. Sir, please state your name for the record and proceed. Oh, I just saw you inside, right?
I'm sorry?
I just saw you inside.
Yes,
right?
yeah, we
okay,
just spoke for a couple of seconds.
My glasses don't work that well.
Good afternoon, Chair Gennaro and members of the Environmental Protection Committee. My name is Wayne Arden. I'm here to testify on behalf of the Sierra Club, which represents nearly 15,000 members in New York City. I'm chair of the Transportation Committee and vice chair of the New York City Executive Committee. We strongly support Intro 291, which if passed will increase idling penalties applicable to trucks and buses. In general, trucks and buses, which are often heavy-duty vehicles, pollute disproportionately more than light or medium-duty vehicles. We have observed that many drivers do not comply with the existing anti-idling law, and thus to improve compliance, both stiffer penalties and more vigilant enforcement are necessary. We view Intro 291 as a much-needed but still interim measure. On September the 28th, a year ago, the New York City Council voted unanimously in favor of the ZEV for New York City Act, which Mayor Adams signed into law on October the 23rd. This law, Local Law 140, accelerates the city's purchase and use of zero-emission vehicles. Local Law 140 should be thought of New York City's North Star regarding transportation emissions. The best way to reduce the harmful pollution generated by internal combustion engines, whether idling or not idling, is to replace them entirely with zero-emission technologies. In addition, to reduce the pollution generated by idling vehicles, we call upon Governor Hochul to reinstate congestion pricing without delay. Per Bloomberg, New York City suffers from the world's worst congestion. London has implemented congestion pricing, and Transport for London reports that at the end of 2023, roadside NO2 emissions were 65% lower in central London and 45% lower in outer London than in 2016. In summary, we staunchly support Intro 291, but it is one of multiple steps New York City must take to reduce the debilitating effects of transportation emissions.
Perfectly timed. Thank you for your good testimony. Really appreciate you being here today. Best of the Sierra Club.
I want to thank the committee and the chair for holding this meeting. I'm Greg Smith-Simon, and I represent the Rise to Resilience Coalition, a campaign of more than 100 groups working on climate resilience policies. The coalition has asked me to make use of this hearing on citizen reporting and the environment to raise the issue of resident reporting of flooding, especially that caused by rainstorms. Because residents frequently use 311 to report flooding from storms, we see several opportunities to streamline reporting, to collect more consistent data on flooding in the city, and to refer residents to appropriate resources to address flooding. Currently, flooding reports on the online 311 system are divided among categories like street flooding versus highway flooding and can't be reported on the 311 app.
Sir, you're off topic. This is not a hearing about that.
I understand. All right. Thank you.
And so, I mean, more than happy to hear your views about the oversight topic or the bills, but
I understand. I confess that the group that sent me was somewhat misinformed on the topic, and so I'm sorry to take up the committee's time.
oh, but thanks just the same. But out of fairness, I have to keep people on topic.
I understand.
But appreciate that. Appreciate this panel, and make sure you're. And as everyone knows, we want the benefit of your full written testimony so that it can be duly considered. And great to see you, Samara, and Eric, as always, And so thank you all very much. The next panel. I'll take the slips. Is this it? Oh, wrong glasses. Okay, the next panel will consist of Ryan O'Toole, looks like Walton Hauling, Melissa Barber, representing Mechanical Contractors Association of New York, Larry Zogby, representing RDS Delivery, Dimos Demopoulos, Local 553 of the Teamsters. Demos and I go back a long time. Kendra Hems. Oh, just, okay. Kendra Hems, the Trucking Association of New York. Patrick Condrew. What is this?
Bus for New York City Coalition.
Okay, Bus for New York City Coalition and Bus Association of New York. So that is our second panel. Why don't you hold these slips? Put my other glasses on. Okay, we're going to change it up. We're going to go from my right to my left. And so it was really the green that got me. The green caught my eye, so.
Thank you. My name is Larry Zogby, president of RDS Same Day Delivery. Thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding New York City Citizen Air Complaint Program. The program definitely impacts our daily operations and small business at hand. In regard to due process, complaints often arrive 6 to 12 months after the alleged violation. Hearings are scheduled another 6 to 12 months later, making defense preparation difficult at best. Our team waits hours on Zoom hearings, losing up to a half a day with no clear process or scheduling a commitment. The background system lacks effective policies, procedures, and it hampers efficiency. Timely issuance of summons is essential for our legal proceedings. In regard to access to evidence, summonses often lack critical evidence such as videos or detailed complaints. The lack of transparency hinders our ability to prepare a defense. Evidence should be made available before hearings for fair adjudication. Some of the nuances, we're a last mile delivery. We focus on medical deliveries. I want you to think about specimen, pharmaceuticals, organs, all that require controlled temperature. Drivers face weather-related challenges: cold, heat, rain, snow. Think of safety systems, air conditioner, heat, defrost, often require more than 3 minutes of idling. Public safety must be a priority over rigid time limits. I'm definitely against 291 to increase penalties for idling. Penalties should not be increased until the program's flaws are addressed. I'm definitely in support of 941 and 747. These bills are addressed. Key issues with the program. The program is being exploited as a full-time job by some individuals, which was never the law's intent. It's an unintended consequence. We support the bills and urge their passage. The program is flawed, but 941 and 747 offer the solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your good testimony. I'm just going to hold up a second. Okay, we're back. If you could state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Patrick Condren. I'm a lifelong person from Brooklyn, New York, and living in New York City in the bus business. I represent the Bus Association of New York as a board member and the administrator of the Bus for NYC Corporation, Coalition, which was formed recently on behalf of private bus companies here in New York City who provide public transportation. I'm here to point out that trucks and buses are different. The New York State motor vehicles notwithstanding, the reality is public and private buses both serve the same riding public. This common good is for the benefit of people, passengers, and the public, not materials, food, or truck items. Respectfully, the effort and clarification that the Commissioner mentioned before, that there's need for clarification in these bills. Buses are separate. 55 cars generate significantly more emissions than a 55-passenger bus. The people on a bus are doing the right thing. I heard school buses mentioned before. Well, there's grandchildren, aunts, uncles, and many people in the room today ride a bus periodically, whether it's local, express, commuter, intercity, tour travel, etc. The MTA, in their recent environmental assessment for the congestion pricing program, recognized trucks, unfortunately, as being the major issue in dealing with what we're dealing with. Buses are like when they're idling, need to have people on board because they cannot regenerate, the air and turn on and off. They need to stay on. Just like you're in a plane at the gate, you're in a tube, and if that air comes down hot, you're in trouble. Speaking of regeneration, the reality is that many of the new buses, the air coming into the buses is dirtier than going out. In California, bus operators are asking government to get a tax credit for the benefit of cleaning the air. Reality is that buses are not trucks, unlike other vehicles such as refrigerated trucks. Buses are often need to maintain power. Passenger safety is paramount. Thank you for these reasons to suggest buses exempt.
Thank you very much for your good testimony. I'm just going to hold that up again. If you could sit on this side of me, Andrew, so I could have access to both you and the counsel to the committee at the same time. Because otherwise I got to talk over him to get to you. Yeah. And so while Andrew repositions himself, pushes out of the way, get my water. Okay, great, okay. Timos, you're up.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dimos Demopoulos, and I'm Secretary-Treasurer of Joint Council 16 of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Thank you, Chair Gennaro, and the other members of the committee for the opportunity to testify before you this afternoon. I'm here today representing both leadership of Teamsters Joint Council 16 and its thousands, actually 120,000 rank-and-file members, many of whom are truck drivers working in New York City. It's on behalf of them that we strongly urge the laws regulating idling engines and citizen complaints be fully reimagined before the committee even considers the law increasing penalties for idling infractions. Having fines jump from 350, and I heard testimony from DEP that it's even going to be higher than that, only serve to further incentivize the outrageous and sometimes illegal behavior of the vigilantes earning thousands to allegedly catch idling drivers. I just want to state also that it's not only the big companies that are getting hit with this, it's also the small companies. And in some cases, even the employee winds up having to pay. These small companies cannot sustain these kinds of fines and operate a business, particularly if they're Teamster employees, to provide the benefits and the wages that their contracts demand. And they're happy to do so, but sometimes they have a rough time. If the goal is idling legislation to encourage business to invest in renewable energies, raising fines does the opposite. Many of the companies are using renewable energies. They're using the renewable diesel fuel, which you're aware of, and how much that reduces the emissions. And they are going electric wherever they can, and they're trying to make accommodations.
Demos, I gotta say at the time.
You got my testimony.
But we did biofuels together. We did horse
We
carriages
worked very
together.
well together over the
so
years,
will,
and it's my hope that we continue to do so, my friend.
Here, here. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Demos. Please state your name for the record. And
Hi,
proceed.
my name is Melissa Barber. I am the Assistant Director of the Mechanical Contractors Association of New York. Our members perform heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, and fire sprinkler installation and service work throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. Most of our contractors are small to medium-sized businesses operating in an already challenging environment. I'm here today submitting testimony, as you know, regarding this oversight hearing. We surveyed our membership of over 400 contractors, and to gather data, and our results found a lot of what you heard today. There's significant inconsistencies between contractor experiences, making it clear there's no streamlined, fair, or reasonable process in place for small businesses to contend with these violations. We asked our members, what's the average amount of time it takes from the date of incident to receipt of violation? Answers ranged from a few weeks to 3 months to 6 months to 9 months, absolutely all over the place. We asked, when you receive a violation, can you view the video evidence? This overwhelming response was no. The lack of transparency hinders the ability to prepare a defense. We also asked, what's the average time period between receipt of violation and the hearing? The quickest hearing date was 6 months. The majority was over a year, and the most recently 2 years from the date of the violation. In addition, the procedure for the hearing is difficult and timely, and our members expressed frustration with trying to get call into the hearing, waiting on the phone for all parties to be present, waiting for a callback, and many must decide if disputing the violation is worth the cost of losing a day of work. This lack of timeliness across all facets makes it impossible for a fair legal proceeding to take place. We strongly support efforts for a cleaner environment, but we want to achieve this goal rather than creating a revenue stream disguised as an environmental regulation. So we really respectfully request that the council take immediate steps to address and correct the inequities present with the program. To that extent, Intro 291, we are against, and we support the changes in the other bills. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have written testimony, that and this goes to all the panel. I mean, one thing you're always looking for in testimony from stakeholders is the extent to which the bills that are on the table accomplish or don't accomplish what you would like to see accomplished, and revisions that you think would be beneficial. And so that's always the best kind of testimony.
I did include that in my last paragraph, but I ran out of time.
Okay,
Just
make sure that's the to everyone yet to testify. It's like we have the bill, it does this, we want it to do that, or whatever, and that's always the most compelling kind of testimony. But
Thank you.
And people are free after they testify to submit more detailed testimony after the fact. There's a website for that or whatever, and I'll have the council read into the record or whatever. But thank you for your good testimony. And now I'll ask this gentleman to state his name for the record and proceed.
My name is Zach Miller. I am the Director of Metro Region Operations for the Trucking Association of New York. I testify today regarding the Citizens Air Complaint Program and the myriad ways it has gone off the rails. I must start off, though, by saying that we do not condone unnecessary idling. Enforcement is a key tool to be deployed when an operator is doing something they should not be doing. We even agree with much of what the Commissioner said today. However, the key to successful enforcement is not to create a profitable cottage industry, but to permanently and positively change behavior. This program excels in the former and fails in the latter. Of immediate concern is the lack of due process. On average, complaints arrive 9 months after the violation was issued, and the hearing is scheduled 9 months after that. This severely impacts fleets and drivers' ability to prepare a defense. By that time, the driver may no longer be with the company, may not be able to recall the events of the day, or the customer that was being serviced may no longer be in operation. Another significant impediment to due process is a lack of access to evidence needed for a thorough defense. Videos or specific details of the complaint are often absent from the summons. Respondents must ask for videos in advance of the hearing. Sometimes that request is granted, sometimes it is not. When it is granted, the video link is only active for 3 days. In fact, I recently saw a ticket issued to the wrong fleet. The fleet tried for months to explain this to DEP with no response. Finally, on the hearing date, the video clearly showed a vehicle belonging to a different company. Every other camera-issued ticket in New York City is received in a timely manner, and a link to the video or a picture is included with the summons, allowing fleets to decide if they wish to fight the ticket or pay in a timely manner. Speaking of which, in every other enforcement program, from parking tickets, camera tickets, weigh-in-motion tickets, there is a built-in mechanism to transfer liability, which does not exist here. This is especially burdensome on rental and leasing companies, as well as fleets utilizing independent contractors. This prevents summonses going to the liable party, which paints them as repeat violators, even though they are not operating the equipment. In each one of the points raised, from due process to access of evidence to transfer liability, it makes this program purely punitive while limiting the ability to. And
thank you.
The rest
thank
is
you.
written.
And I will point out, because a lot of people are bringing this up. My bill would mandate that people who are being accused get to see all the evidence. I think that's only.
And we support 941 and 747.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And so, sir, if you can state your name for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan O'Toole, and I'm the Vice President of Walton Hauling. We're a truck rental house for the film and TV industry. As such, a few aspects of the city's current idling violation program have proven problematic for us, and we're hoping to see some positive reforms. First, the drivers on our vehicles don't work for us. They work for the film and TV productions that rent our trucks. Since we receive idling summons anywhere from 6 months to over a year after they happen, sometimes the productions at that point are shut down, and we have no way to bill them back to the customer. In those cases, we are having to pay the violation and eat the cost, even though the driver was not employed by us. We would like to see a much quicker turnaround time in the issuance of these summons. As a rental house, sometimes our trucks are rented out to short-term to 20 different productions over the span of just a few months. The escalating fees by number of idling violations per truck has become a big problem for us in this area. Sometimes our vehicles are on their third and subsequent violation, but each one of those violations was received by a different customer and different driver. In those situations, the customer understandably is willing to pay the $350 fine, but not willing to pay the escalated $600 fine for the prior violations that other customers received. For this reason, a transfer of liability program would be a very welcome development so that our customers are not penalized for other customers' infractions. And finally, also, access to video and photograph evidence has been a huge problem for us. The vast majority of times I request video evidence prior to a hearing, I never received it. And as Zach just mentioned, we had a violation received well over a year ago. We did not have a plate number in our fleet matching the plate number on the violation. I requested numerous times video evidence prior to the hearing and didn't receive it. So I did attend the scheduled hearing a few weeks ago. The video evidence provided during the hearing clearly showed that it was another company's truck that was idling.
And thank you for your good testimony, and you made some very good suggestions there, and we do appreciate that, and we appreciate the full body of your testimony. And,
absolutely.
I thank this panel for its good contribution to the hearing. I just have to step out for 2 minutes. The council to the committee will set up the next panel, and then I'll be right back.
Okay, the next panel will be Eileen Spinner, Robin Warren, Hayden Brockett, Patrick Schwell, and Michael Streeter.
Okay, we're back. Thank you for your patience and tolerance. And like I said, we're going to start at this end and go that way. And so we're going to start to my left, and we'll go across to my right. Sir, sure. If you can,
all right.
State your name for the record and proceed.
Sure. Hi, I'm Michael Streeter. I've been a participant in and champion of the idling program since 2019. I submit a lot.
Is the mic on? Is the mic on? Is the red light?
There we go.
Okay.
Is that better? All right.
Yes.
Hi. Hi, I'm Michael Streeter. I've been a participant in and champion of the idling program since 2019. I submit a lot of complaints, but at the same time, I've also recruited a lot of folks. I've trained and mentored and spent countless hours answering questions for people trying to get started. Having done this for 5 years now, there are so many companies that I used to catch idling that now barely idle or have outright stopped. Stroman Line Haul used to idle in front of Key Foods on Montague Street in Brooklyn for about 20 minutes, several days a week. And those trucks are all over the city. They were idling everywhere. And then one day, it just stopped completely. If you saw the idling segment on The Daily Show recently with the great Samara, that was something that came about through me. And I'm very proud of that segment and of the awareness it brought to the program, and even more so the positive response. People want this program in their own city. If you think I'm in this for the money, why would I do all that? Wouldn't that put me out of business? The program just had its biggest month ever in August with about 12,000 submissions. Complaints are up, but make no mistake, idling is down because there's more of us participating in the program. Intro 941 will discourage participation. It will make recruiting new participants even harder than it already is, and it will cause many companies to revert to their bad behaviors. If the idea that there are people making a lot of money doing this, if that's the problem, first off, so what? But more importantly, that is a symptom of the way the program is currently set up, to where you've got mostly savants with postgraduate degrees submitting the majority of the complaints. So to fix that, don't pass Intro 941, instead pass Intro 5, make it less complicated, more accessible.
Thank you for your good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your good testimony. Appreciate your service to the reduction of air pollution in New York City. Please state your name for the record. And
good afternoon. My name is Dr. Patrick Schnall. As a pediatrician and participant in the Citizens Air Complaint Program, I support Intro 5 and 291, but I strongly oppose 941 because 941 is a compilation of proposals that are diametrically opposed to protecting the environment and consequently human health. First, this bill would significantly extend the time school buses are allowed to idle throughout the city. Specifically, school buses will be able to idle for 18 minutes at certain temperatures with no penalties at all. It is truly remarkable that in the age of impending climate collapse, we're debating a proposal to increase rather than to limit idling. It is also remarkable that the detrimental effect on the health and well-being of school children does not seem to have any relevance whatsoever to whoever authored this proposal. Children are clearly going to be harmed by this bill. Second, Intro 941 would encourage more idling by giving a discount to companies that install so-called anti-idling technology. In reality, these devices are frequently already installed in trucks in operation today. I have seen truck drivers intermittently tap on their gas pedals to outsmart this technology. They may evade tickets, but they don't stop idling. All these devices do is let companies escape summonses while still exposing New Yorkers to unnecessary air pollution. As such, these devices actually encourage idling. If Intro 941 passes, drivers and companies will quickly learn that they are now free to idle as much as they want without having to fear any enforcement. Intro 941 will therefore cause more pollution, not less. Third, Intro 941, it reduces incentives for citizens to join the program, undermining the only effective means of enforcing our anti-idling laws. This program requires a lot of work. I realize that $87.50 may sound like a lot of money, but in reality, many fines are never paid, and if they do get paid, it may take 2 to 5 years. In addition, we have significant expenses and pay taxes on this money. With the current award structure, we generated $50 million for New York City. This money dwarfs in comparison with the positive financial and human long-term impact. By eliminating idling, there will be fewer deaths over the next 5 to 50 years, fewer cancers, fewer hospital admissions, fewer New Yorkers diagnosed with heart attacks, strokes,
Thank you for your good testimony. Your time has expired.
And this, by the way, includes the workers
that are
the drivers.
Thank you for your good testimony. I appreciate it. If you could please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Robin Warren, New York Clean Air Collective. I am here.
If you could speak right into the microphone and people could hear you better.
Okay.
And I'll give you a couple of seconds on the clock after because
Thank you.
Yeah, just reset it. Fine. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Robin Warren, New York Clean Air Collective, also a fellow with Terradu Climate School. I'm here today to help dispel a misconception about who participates in the Citizens Air Complaint Program and about who will be most profoundly impacted if the program is diminished, as it certainly will be if Intro 941 passes. Mine is one of many families for whom the Citizens Air Complaint Program has become a lifeline. We are a family of 4 who live in a 1-bedroom apartment in this city. We are part of the sandwich generation, caring for children and looking after seniors. This is my family, and this is why I participate in the Citizens Air Complaint Program. Our youngest daughter was 4 when she was diagnosed with acute respiratory distress syndrome, feeling angry and helpless about the air pollution in our neighborhood. We read about the Citizens Air Complaint Program in the New York Times and decided there was something my husband and I could do. The very next day, my highly educated and principled husband, a brown man in his 50s with a pronounced Bengali accent, hit the streets with a cell phone camera at the ready and a photo of our 4-year-old daughter. We learned as we went along, first by watching training videos by We Act, the West Harlem Alliance for Environmental Justice, then by fellow clean air activists as we met them in the street. We learned that this is a labor-intensive endeavor, that this wasn't just taking a 3-minute video. We learned how to post each occurrence with all of the requisite documentation in a reasonable window of time.
I'll tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. And so Your time has elapsed, and I get to ask questions. And my question is that I believe you were about to make a good point. I would ask you to make that point. But your time had expired, but I'm asking you a question. So please proceed.
Specifically in reference to the reasonable window of time, we are a busy family with children, and already the program is very complicated. It is a complex process. 5 days is just not a realistic possibility. And that in itself, that one thing about 941 itself has the probability of crushing this program, in my opinion.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the question, make sure you got that on the record. And I appreciate your being here today and making the points that you made. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman Gennaro. My name is Hayden Brockett. I live on the Upper West Side with my family, 2 sons and my wife. I'm a union member, a lawyer, and a former federal prosecutor. I'm also a volunteer as part of the nonprofit New York Clean Air Collective, which represents the 2,500 ordinary people who work in the Citizens Air Complaint Program. Chairman Gennaro, today we join with the NRDC, the League of Conservation Voters, the New York Civil Liberties Union, the New York Lawyers in the Public Interest, and dozens of citizens who are here today and are going to testify on Zoom and who cannot make it today because they are busy. We all oppose Intro 941. I can tell you personally how this program works. The stretch of Broadway outside my home used to have Merchants Fleet trucks delivering for Amazon, idling all day, every day. But thanks to me, my kids, and many other reporters, these trucks shut off overnight. That is exactly what these citizens want. When Commissioner Agarwala comes here and slanders us and says that we are in it for the money, let me be clear, we want the idling program to be put out of business because we want idling to stop. I personally have testified to you, Chairman Gennaro, about how the air inspectors need to be paid more money. There's 65 of them total, 15 review air complaints. I agree, there should be way more, they should be paid more, period, end of story. Unfortunately, I'm a former federal prosecutor, and in my 30 seconds remaining, I'll tell you that the DEP cannot be trusted to enforce the code, the speech code that they have asked for and that you currently have in Intro 941. Why? I'll tell you. Of the 5 people, he was wrong before, he said 4, there were 5 that they have prosecuted, judges at oath have tossed those false statement allegations, finding them completely untrue. Why? Because those people made mistakes. If 941 goes forward, people will have chilled participation because they will be prosecuted for making mistakes. That is not how it works in America. And I only mention that because we want to do the right thing.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
I want to ask you. I want to ask you to finish your point to put it on the record.
Thank you. There is just one example, someone who submitted his first complaint ever, and he happened to be in a different time zone than the Eastern time zone when he submitted it, and the DEP's website introduced an error. He told the DEP about it, and they charged him with making a false statement when it was obviously a misstatement. I cannot believe I even have to tell you this, Chairman Gennaro. An oath hearing officer heard it and tossed that charge immediately, but it spent thousands of dollars and man hours and stress for him to have to do something to fix that the DEP had done itself. I bring that up because it is relevant to 941. Right now, 941 as written will make the DEP commissioner, judge, jury, and executioner with no oversight from this council and no oversight from a judicial officer. That is not how we need to do things in America. The Adams administration has proven that with respect to oversight of this program, it is abusing its authority. I hate to have to say that, but it's absolutely true. And I'd be willing to work with you more about the specifics. I have tried to meet with with Commissioner Agarwala about that. He told me to my face that he's not going to put any positive changes into this program unless and until he gets a code of conduct, which is opposed by the New York Civil Liberties Union, because that's not how the First Amendment works. We get a right to petition the government for redress of wrongs and that's guaranteed in the First Amendment. If there are bad actors, if there are unkind things that are said, that shouldn't happen. It should not happen. But the answer is not a speech code. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your good testimony. And no, everyone will not be getting the, yeah, okay, please.
My name is Eileen Spinner. We want New Yorkers to be excited to get out and report
Yeah, if you could speak right into the microphone.
and report illegal idling and be paid more for working more. A strong citizen incentive is vital. Intro 941 makes it harder for new people to join this important program, and it makes it easier for big companies to pollute our air. This is wrong. We should not be writing loopholes into the air code. We should not be cutting the awards. And frankly, we're astonished that we have to come to City Hall to remind this committee of that fact. My dear friend Samara Swanston wanted the committee to know something else that she didn't get a chance to say, and this is her quote: "The issue of air pollution is very personal to me because I have lost multiple family members to asthma. Sadly, this year, 3,200 New Yorkers will die from air pollution, and 6,000 adults and children will be rushed to the emergency room because of asthma." Her personal loss of family members is why she helped draft and pass the law expanding the Citizens Air Complaint Program and setting the award at 25%. This program is working, and only Intro 5 and Intro 291 should move forward because they combat illegal idling, but Intro 941 must be stopped today. I, too, personally have asthma, and during the pandemic, I would sit on the Brooklyn Heights Promenade with the BQE basically car-free. I saw my pulmonologist after that, and he said to me, "I cured you." I said, "No, you didn't cure me. Far less pollution helped lessen my asthma symptoms. And my Brooklyn Heights neighbor also participates in this program, and I've barely seen an idling truck anymore. The program has made a difference. It works. And I hardly need this anymore. It's my inhaler, because I can walk on Fulton Street and Montague Street, and I'm able to breathe."
Thank you for your good and compelling testimony. I want to thank this panel. People should submit their statements in full to the council so that your testimony can get all due consideration. Appreciate that, and I'll call the next panel. Okay, the next panel, Patrick Hyland of the Metro Truck Association, April MacGyver, the Plumbing Foundation of New York, and, my old friend Felice Farber of the Subcontractors Trade Association, Rocco Lacertosa, also someone I go back a long time with, from the New York State Energy Coalition. Okay, now we're going to go from the Brooklyn Bridge side towards the Hudson River. That's how we're gonna do it. Okay, Brooklyn, let's do it.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank you, Councilman Gennaro, for holding this hearing and allowing me to address the committee. My name is Patrick Hyland, and I am the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Trucking Association. Our association represents employers who exclusively hire Teamster Local 282 drivers to operate their trucks, performing heavy construction delivery and hauling of aggregate supply materials throughout the 5 boroughs. To be even more specific, we own the dump trucks, dump trailers, flatbeds. Approximately half of these companies are certified MWBE businesses, and the largest fleets we represent are in fact certified MWBEs. Our membership comprises the subcontractor trucking companies working on public works projects throughout the city. As you see, these projects can vary both in size and complexity. Getting materials delivered in excavated materials hauled out of New York City is more difficult than other locations we represent due to traffic, density, the vertical nature of this metropolis, etc. These are the type of conditions that occasionally require the need for the trucks to be held in line outside the construction site before entering and departing. Legislators that preceded you in the council thought it would be appropriate for Teamster 282 drivers to operate these vehicles to constantly turn them on and off outside these sites. I can assure you that is not the way these $250,000 vehicles are meant to be operated. On the contrary, these vehicles need to warm up for a few minutes per time when restarted before being put into gear. These trucks are also BIC certified, which means they are certified clean idle vehicles. I will submit my written. I'm just going to get to a few bullet points here.
Sure.
We appreciate you taking this up in the bill and addressing the program. A few things we'd like to see in it. A certified clean idle exemption program similar to the state of California, which is about a 10-minute program. We believe the time should be extended, similar to more of a 5-minute time at minimum, like other municipalities. Also, we'd like to see a potential loading or delivering exemption like other municipalities have when these trucks are working outside a construction site.
Thank you. Your time's expired. I appreciate your good testimony, and you made points that we want to consider. No, you taking notes on the testimony? Okay, he's taking notes. It's good. And so, thank you very much for your testimony. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, Chairman. My name is April McIver. I'm the Executive Director of the Plumbing Foundation of the City of New York, representing New York City licensed master plumbers, as well as engineers, manufacturers, and supply houses. We do support efforts to mitigate emissions into the environment, but we do have concerns with the Citizen Air Complaint Program. I heard you loud and clear about addressing the actual introductions that are on here, so I will say that first. We are here to support Intro 747 as well as 941 as good first steps towards reforming this program, as well as oppose 291 until the program is reformed. I'd like to highlight a couple of concerns that a lot of my colleagues have addressed today, especially the due process concern in terms of the timeline. We surveyed our contractors. I've had a lot of calls over the last 2 years regarding the different timelines when they received the complaint from the date of observation, when their hearing is, and the lack of having a link to the evidence to prepare a proper defense, and that's a huge concern for our members. In addition, I just wanted to highlight, I heard the term arbitrary tossed around earlier, and I think, looking at the time, the 3-minute and the 1-minute time, I don't really know the good reason behind that, because our state has a 5-minute idling law. I think that's an area that should be considered by the council as well. And then lastly, health and safety concerns. I think DEP actually did a pretty good job highlighting the concerns regarding harassment in terms of the citizens that are engaged in the program. But I'd like to highlight that OSHA has requirements on employers to protect workers from something called cold stress, and they also have requirement employers to prevent heat-related illnesses, and I think these need to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and best regards to the Plumbing Foundation. Felice Farber.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gennaro. I'm Felice Farber, Executive Director of the Subcontractors Trade Association. STA represents 350 union specialty trade contractors, and I'd like to highlight that a number of our members are small mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors, and they're reporting receiving violations, oftentimes while waiting to make deliveries at job sites. Our primary concern with the Citizens Air Complaint Program is the lack of due process that's been mentioned. 6 to 12 months to get the summons, and 18 to 24 months to actually get a hearing. So we urge the Council to require timely issuance of summonses and timely hearings to ensure fair proceedings. In addition, as mentioned, we're very concerned about the lack of access to evidence. Oftentimes they don't get the video or specific details in advance, and it makes it very difficult to present defense or to follow up. So we strongly recommend the Council mandate the availability of evidence well before hearings to facilitate a fair and efficient adjudication process. Again, as mentioned, we're very concerned about vehicle operator safety, and the temperature requirements of OSHA and efforts on the state legislature to pass a temperature control act as well. So public and driver safety must remain a top priority, and we ask that these be considered. Green vehicles was mentioned as well, and something that we support. We believe penalties should be adjusted based on the type of truck, with reduced penalties for cleaner, more efficient vehicles, such as clean idle vehicles, trucks equipped with regeneration systems. We've also had members complain about getting ticket violations for trucks that had automatic shutoff features as well. So in conclusion, while the Citizen Air Complaint Program aims to address air quality concerns, it currently does so in a manner that undermines due process, lacks transparency, and unfairly penalizes certain parties. Intro 941 and 747 address some of the issues I raised, but do not go far enough. We believe that with thoughtful reforms, the program can better achieve its environmental goals without unduly burdening the trucking industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Felice. Good to see you. Okay.
Good seeing you too, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Oh, Rocco. Yes, please, I know your name, not everyone does.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair Gennaro and members of the Committee on Environmental Protection. My name is Rocco J. Lacertosa. I serve as the CEO of the New York State Energy Coalition, NYSEC. Our association has long served as an advocate for the oil heating industry, ensuring that the policies, regulations, and issues that affect our members and their customers are addressed with urgency and foresight. I'm here to discuss the serious concerns NYSEC has with the Citizens Air Complaint Program and its impact on our members who provide essential services to New York City. The program has unfortunately become a source of frustration and financial burden for our members. NYSEC represents businesses that provide vital services, including heating of critical city infrastructure such as police departments, fire stations, and NYCHA campuses. These are services that are essential to the safety and well-being of New Yorkers, especially during the colder months when reliable heat is essential. The main issue with the program is the lack of due process. Our members often receive complaints months after the alleged idling violation occurred, making it extremely difficult to respond and prepare an adequate defense. The drawn-out process places an undue burden on businesses that are simply trying to operate within the law. Timely issuances of summons is not just a matter of fairness, it is essential for ensuring the businesses have a chance to defend themselves properly. It is important to recognize that our industry has long been committed to reducing emissions independently of this program. NYSEC was instrumental in the adoption of bioheat, making New York City the first city in the nation to mandate cleaner, renewable heating oil. We continue to lead in sustainability efforts, but the Citizens Air Complaint Program is not the driving force behind these changes. It has been our industry and our partners here today that have proactively made efforts to adopt cleaner technologies and practices that have made a difference. NYSEC opposes Intro 291, which seeks to increase penalties, and strongly supports Intros 941 and 747, which would add transparency and fairness to citizens' complaint programs. It's concerning that some individuals have turned the program into a full-time pursuit.
Rocco, if I ask you a question and give you more time, people are going to be throwing stuff at me, because we know each other a long time.
Exactly.
And so thank you for your testimony. I want to thank this panel for its good addition to this proceeding, and make sure that your full testimony is entered into the record by submitting it to the council. Appreciate you being here today, everybody. And Felice, good to see you. Okay, the next panel, Eric Eisenberg, Ryan, L-O-F-O, I don't know. Yeah. Lafam? I'm not sure. Looks like Tina Ting Wang, Brooklyn. Hunter Severini. Hunter Severini? I just can't see that. You have to read it. Yeah. Rafael Kroll Zaidi? Okay, there we go. So change, oh yeah. Okay, so for this panel, we're going to start this side and go this way. Thank you very much for your patience and tolerance for being here, and please state your name for the record and proceed with your good testimony.
Thank you. My name is Ting Ting Wong. I am a proud resident of Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. I'm a substitute teacher and tutor, and I'm opposed to Intro 941 and 747. I live near a lot of schools, and emissions from idling make the air near many of these schools so atrocious I often find myself holding my breath when I walk or bike past. I have never filed an idling complaint, but I learned about the Citizens Air Complaint Program recently in the same moment I learned about this new legislation. From my perspective, Intro 941 in particular seems almost totally aimed at discouraging citizen reporting and restricting the program. I'm particularly concerned about the 15-minute grace period for school buses. While the intent of the legislation is to allow for 15 minutes of idling, the practical effect will be to permit indefinite idling, as citizens will not be able to realistically record over 18-minute video complaints. Finally, I am concerned that amid all of this talk of money, the fine abatement seems to shift the focus of financial precariousness for the commercial respondents, who are almost universally the real millionaires in the equation, to not the citizen reporter who does all of this confusing work in good faith for a very uncertain and delayed reward. Why is the city seeking to rebalance the program entirely in favor of Amazon and Con Ed? Why not impose stricter limits on idling near NYCHA housing and hospitals? Why not set aside a portion of fines for small business electrification? Instead, this bill slashes participant awards by half. The cap needs to be on idling, not participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your participation and your good testimony. For the next witness starts, Josh, can I see you for a second?
Wang Fangwu, right? Yeah. He called, yeah. He butchered his name, but I think it was